So let's add some extra fun to this now. So, I mean, this works, but obviously there's problems with our elevator. If it's at the top, we can't get on it. If we're at the bottom, we need to be able to call it back down again. Maybe we want to add a delay to the action of it going up and down so that we have the ability to be able to control, where it is, the top or the bottom and whatnot. So let's first just throw a delay on. Delay is pretty easy to do, so we can do that. So right here we have our event graph. Now our event graph is being called as soon as we overlap. So I'm going to drag out of the output pin again for the once it's been overlapped out of the event, and we're going to call we're looking for a delay node. And so a delay node will allow us to delay for a period of time before it triggers. So it'll stop on this delay node, wait for this period of time, and then continue on. Now you'll notice that there's a duration here, and we want the user to be able to put that in so we can create another variable. Here's another way to make variables. If you've got the node already, we can right click and we can say promote to variable, and it'll create that variable for us. So here it is down here now. We want to make it visible, and we'll call it delay duration. So we, know how long that that it's going to delay for. It's a float value already because it knew it was a float coming out. I'm going to drag that in into our settings panel here, and let's give it a default value here. So I'll have to compile, and maybe 0.5 of a second of a delay as our default, and then let's test that again. We're just going to compile, and I'll Alt P, and so I step on it, it delayed, and then we go to the top. So I get off, I get on, and it delayed half a second before it went back to the bottom again. So that certainly works. Another one that is a bit of a problem is that the trigger can be fired, at the wrong times and whatnot. Or you could actually refire it if it's in the middle of being active. We can have the problem of firing it. And so let me see if I can make that work. I'm not sure I'll be able to, but we'll see if we can actually cause the problem. So I'll go up to the top, and I'm going to fire it to go back. Oop, I jumped off by mistake. It's stuck at the top. So what can happen is once it's at the top, for instance, and we're up here, and we can jump onto it, jump off of it. The elevator will go to the bottom, and then you jump down, it comes back up again. We want to be able to stop it, or if it's in the middle of travel and you jump onto it, it will suddenly refire it because you're all of a sudden overlapping it, and it'll suddenly start again. And that's not what we want. We want to be able to stop this thing from firing when it's in travel. Once it starts moving, finish the action before we're able to trigger it again. So, what do we need to do that with? So I'm going to create another one of these invisible variables, basically one of these hidden variables. And this is going to be active, okay? Meaning the elevator is active. I'm not going to make it visible, and I'm going to make it a Boolean again. Okay, so the default value is going to be active is going to be true. So the elevator is active right now. If we trigger it, it will fire. And so then we need to branch that in with another branch here. So you can put that, I'm trying to think here, maybe in the front here. And so we'll put a branch in. And so if the elevator is active, go ahead and do it. Well, this is always true. It's always active. So it's always going to happen. And not, so false will never be called. So let's also do this then. When we finish, let's go ahead and, as we start, I guess we should do this first. As soon as we start, let's change the value of active to false. So we'll need a set. So an alt drag out active. We're going to put this in. And so it's currently now so it's true by default. This comes out branch true. Immediately it sets this to inactive, right? So it's now false, continues on and does everything it's got to do. Okay. Now, when we're done, we want to set this to be back to active again. Once it's finished, we want to finish off with that. So we need to set that active again. And we're going to bring that down out of here. And then we're going to go do our switch. Okay. And we want to set it active again. So once the animation is complete, set active. So again, think of the logic as it comes, as it gets triggered. Is it active? Yes, it is. Branch true then. Set it inactive. Of course, we're already on the way here. Everything's running now. So it's going to go ahead and do the delay. It's going to check and see if it's the bottom or it's the top. It's going to go ahead and set the relative location on the update. And when it's finished, it's going to go and set it back to be active again. So it's available to us. So now what's going to happen is we can try and re-trigger it. Once it's been triggered once, it has to finish its cycle and get all the way to the top before it can get triggered again, or all the way to the bottom and get triggered again, which means you can't do things like jump up and down on it, for instance, and have it keep re-triggering it. If you can jump out of the trigger box, it would constantly keep re-triggering it. So that's going to work now. So that's going to give us a little more control over this. So let's see. Next thing we're going to need to be able to do is have some sort of button. Now I've got this elevator button mesh, which was just a real simple little model. It doesn't do anything. It's just a static mesh, and I'm just going to use that as our blueprint for it. Now we could include it in the blueprint here, but then it would be very difficult to set it where it needs to be. It might be a button for a wall that you want or something, and you wouldn't be able to place it separately and place it wherever you want in your scene. That would be nice, wouldn't it? It's the separate button to be able to connect to your elevator. To be able to drive it. So I'm going to go back over to my actor demo BP folder. Yours will be the actor BP. I'm going to right click. I'm going to say blueprint, and I'm going to say actor, and this is going to be BP elevator button demo. Okay, and I'm going to open this up. So this one's going to be very, very simple. All we need in here at this point is going to be a static mesh. That static mesh is going to be just the button mesh. And again, I'm going to drop in here an elevator button static. So there's our button essentially. Okay, now we need some way of triggering it. I just want to trigger around the head here. So I'm going to go in and add a collision, and we're going to add a sphere collision. And I'm just going to move that up around the head here and go ahead and scale it down so it's just around the button. So all we need to do is walk into this now, and we'll be able to trigger this and make it function. We're going to need another event overlap, begin overlap. So I'm going to scroll down with it selected. Event, whoops, and I changed the name by mistake to something. I'm going to call this elevator trigger. Actually, let's call it elevator button trigger so we don't get it confused with our elevator trigger and our other one. And it's going to need an on component begin overlap event. And so it would just kick this over to our event graph. Again, we're not going to need these. You can get rid of them. And so I'm going to actually make sure it's parented to the default scene root as well. So that's not part of our mesh, just again, because there's no need for it. Okay. So in here now, what we want to be able to do is we need to be able to trigger the button and determine which direction the elevator needs to travel. So we're just going to make a two-way button so that if you click on it, it's going to send it one way or the other. So there's a few things we're going to have to do to make this work. First off, we're going to need access to this blueprint. We're going to need to know about this because this is the one that we want to trigger. So this one needs to know about that one. So over in our button, we're going to go in and create a variable. And we're going to call this elevator. Elevator BP might be good. And it's got to be visible. And we have to turn on expose on spawn. So when it shows up in the game, make sure this is visible, okay? So that's a key thing that needs to be turned on here. And then the type is actually going to be our other blueprint. So BP underscore elevator, and you can see we have our elevator demo. So I've got all my blueprints are showing up now. So because I've typed in BP elevator. So there's the demo one I'm using. So that is this one here. So it's actually type of this. All right, this blueprint at this point. And so we're going to need that in a minute. So I'm just going to drag it out anyways. We're going to come back. What we need now is an event. So back to our elevator blueprint. We need an event that's going to get fired. So this is an event. Okay, these event ticks and whatnot, these are events that we don't need. We need an event that will be fired when this button is pressed and essentially this has been overlapped. Okay. So in here we can say, I think it's custom, add custom event. Okay. And we're going to call this something. And so this is going to be elevator elevator demo button event. How's that? So this is going to be the event that's going to get fired, okay? And so when this is fired, essentially, we want to go ahead and we want to branch out of here and we want it to go up or down and whatnot, okay? So right now, this should actually work, except we need to connect this to it. So what do we need in here? We need to be able to call that event. We need to be able to fire this event. So let's type the name of this in since we have got it there. I'm going to copy it, come over here, and I'm going to go and search for it, context sensitive off, okay, in this case, elevator demo button event, okay, when I select that, so this is the ability to be able to fire that now. So we can fire that event. This is this. So when this gets called on our overlap, it's going to call this, it's going to fire this, which is going to move our elevator. So we're going to simply pull that out, and it's looking for a target. So what is this part of? Well, it is part of, in this case, our elevator blueprint, right? It's in there. So let's go ahead and compile. And it says cannot find it, and you go, wait a minute, why can't you find that? I think we need to be able to set this in here with it. Oh, and of course I made a mistake there. I forgot to compile this first. Make sure you compile this. Now that I've put this event here, I hadn't compiled it. It existed sort of in Unreal, but since it hadn't been compiled, when I was trying to compile this, it was throwing errors because it couldn't find the event to be able to call it. So that should be able to call now. So let's test that. I already dragged it out, just doing that test. I'm going to drag it out again. And I'm just going to rotate that forward. So let's see what happens. Do a save, hit play, and see what happens when I hit it. No, it doesn't seem to be doing anything at this point. So let me see why, and let's try to find it. Looks like I got a bunch of errors here. So it says here, access none, trying to read property. So what's happening then is this needs to know about that in game. So now that we've dragged them both in, it's trying to fire it. It's doing its best to do it. It's actually firing this, but it can't find the actual elevator, the instance of the elevator in the scene, because we could have many of these. So in our button, we need to tell it. You can see elevator BP. That is this right here. You can see we made it visible, okay? And right here, we need to say you are going to drive this elevator because this button could drive any number of elevators, any one of the elevators we have in our scene. So I want to say it needs to drive this elevator in this case and not some other instance of the elevator. So let's go ahead and hit play again. I should be able to run into that and it sends it up. Run it into it again and it'll bring it back down again. So I can then jump onto it. And what's nice now is I could go ahead, just hit escape, go up top. I can grab another one of these buttons. And again, we can make sure that it's connected. I'll just hit play. Up to the top, press the button, sends the elevator back down again. Press the button, sends the elevator back to the top again. So now we have an elevator that works with a button that goes in two ways. Yes, it's possible. Then in mine, I actually have the ability to change the elevators to be able to be up only or down only. And again, that's going to take more work. Anybody needs that, let me know and we can talk about it because it's just another layer of nodes and whatnot and tracking what's happened. Is it at the top? Is it at the bottom? Which way should this be able to go? So there you go, an elevator with buttons that work. Now you can build any sort of elevator you need.